Texas, don't do it at night. A week or so ago, I was driving down to Texas. It was a long drive, one that would take 2 days unless I drove nonstop throughout the night. However, I was eager to reach my destination and I chose to tough it out for the sake of getting there sooner. The drive started out relatively normal. I drove for a couple of hours south and I felt good. I had my music cranked and a cooler full of energy drinks in the passenger seat. When I saw the sign saying, "Now entering Tennessee," I thought I was making record time. I must have forgotten to watch the clock though, because the sun began to set. I was partially confused, mainly due to the fact that I had left earlier in the day, but I disregarded it as the idle distractions I'd created for myself to pass the time faster being the cause. Something else odd I noticed was the open freeway. Normally I would expect to see many vehicles all traveling to different places, but instead, I seemed to be the only one out and about. Still, I wasn't feeling tired and I had already committed to driving straight through the night even if things seemed strange. But, as I drove on, I realized that the sun had set far too quickly, and with a lack of vehicles on the road, it looked like I was driving in a void. The blackened world around me was only illuminated by my high beams, but I could only see perhaps 15 feet ahead of me. There were a few normalities like guardrails and mile markers, but if something were to appear in front of me, I'd likely hit it because of my lack of visibility. So, I pulled over. My vehicle came to a subtle halt on the side of the freeway and I turned on my emergency lights. Realistically, I knew it wasn't a fog, it was just dark, darker than the world behind my eyelids. I suppose I wanted to see another car pass by before I concluded that something had gone wrong. But none came. I waited for more than 20 minutes and not one car or truck barreled down the freeway. I decided to roll my window down and allow some fresh air into my car. Plus, I was slightly panicking because I did have somewhere to be and this was taking up precious time. Suddenly, the engine shut off. Even the accessory power had gone cold. I performed some percussive maintenance by smacking my hand against the dash as if it would magically fix everything, but it obviously didn't. Then, I heard a quiet ticking sound. You know the sound your fingers make when you tap them against a table? It was like that, but instead of the soft fleshy contact you'd get from the skin of your digits, it was more like the clicking of nails against plastic. My intuition told me it was coming from under the hood and therefore I had to step outside. But, just as I was about to open the door, I almost had a heart attack because hanging over the trim of the windowsill was a hand. I freaked out and flung myself into the passenger seat on top of my cooler. The hand was tapping its pale white fingers against the inner part of my door, and after my initial fear died down, I thought that it may have been someone looking to help me. Foolish, I know, but I did have my 4 ways on. A part of me knew full well that another vehicle hadn't pulled up behind mine while I was distracted by the engine malfunction, but I still inquired, "Hello, who's there?" If you drive to Texas, don't do it at